r/petty revenge. My family mocked my paranoia for 3 years until I caught abuse. The sound of my little brother crying through the thin walls at 2 a.m. should have woken up our mother. Should have. But I was the only one padding barefoot down the hallway again, pressing my ear to his bedroom door, listening to Jake's muffled sobs and my stepfather Marcus's low, angry voice. Stop being such a baby. Real men don't cry like little girls. I heard a thump. Then silence. Then more crying. My hand hovered over the doorknob for what felt like hours but was probably 30 seconds. I was 17, Jake was only 8, and Marcus was 6'3" and had made it crystal clear that I wasn't welcome in his house even though we'd been living here for 2 years. I knocked softly. Jake? You okay, buddy? The crying stopped immediately. Footsteps approached the door, heavy and deliberate. Marcus's footsteps. He's fine. Go back to bed, Harper. His voice was cold through the door. Unless you want to be grounded from that car you're so proud of. I stood there for another moment, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the crack under the door, I could see the light was still on. Jake hadn't made a sound since I'd knocked. The next morning at breakfast, Jake had a bruise on his upper arm. Purple, black and finger-shaped. Jake hurt himself playing yesterday, Marcus said before I could even open my mouth, not looking up from his coffee. Fell off his bike. Clumsy kid. I looked at my mother, Janet, waiting for her to notice what I was seeing. The bruise. The way Jake flinched when Marcus reached for the syrup bottle. How my 8-year-old brother had started eating his pancakes in complete silence instead of chattering about Pokemon like he used to. Mom, I started carefully. Don't you think we should? Harper, eat your breakfast, she cut me off with that tone. The one that meant she was already annoyed with me before 8 a.m. And stop hovering over Jake like that. You're making him nervous. I wasn't hovering. I was paying attention. There's a difference. But when I tried to explain that difference to my Aunt Carol at Sunday dinner, she laughed. Actually laughed. Oh honey, you always were dramatic. Remember when you were convinced that substitute teacher was out to get you in middle school? She made air quotes with her fingers, smiling like this was all very amusing. Some kids just have active imaginations. This isn't imagination, I said, my voice getting louder. Jake is. Jake is fine, Marcus interrupted smoothly. He had this way of speaking that made everyone listen, made everyone believe him. Harper's been having a hard time adjusting to our family dynamic. Her therapist says it's normal for teenagers to act out when their parents remarry. I didn't have a therapist. But nobody questioned that part. My grandmother nodded knowingly. Divorce is so hard on children. They sometimes create problems where none exist. My parents weren't divorced. My father had died when I was 14. But nobody corrected that either. I looked around the table at all these adults, my family, people who were supposed to protect us, and realized with growing horror that they weren't just dismissing me. They had already decided I was the problem. And Jake, sweet little Jake with his Pokemon cards and gap-toothed smile, was sitting right there in his long-sleeved shirt in the middle of July, saying nothing at all. 3 months later, I started writing everything down. Every unexplained bruise. Every time Jake flinched. Every night I heard crying through the walls. I kept a notebook hidden in my backpack, documenting dates and times like some kind of paranoid detective. Because that's what they kept calling me, paranoid. Harper's at it again became my mother's favorite phrase whenever I tried to bring up my concerns. She'd say it with this tired sigh, like I was an exhausting burden she had to bear. I swear, you look for problems everywhere. The breaking point came during Jake's parent-teacher conference in October. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I'd volunteered to pick him up afterward and arrived early. Through the open classroom door, I heard Mrs. Patterson talking to my mother and Marcus. Jake's become very withdrawn this semester, she was saying. He used to be so outgoing, but now he barely speaks in class. And he's been falling asleep during reading time. Is everything all right at home? I pressed myself against the wall outside the classroom, heart pounding. Everything's fine, Marcus said in that calm, authoritative voice. We've been dealing with some family stress. Harper, my stepdaughter, has been struggling. Making accusations, causing drama. It's been hard on Jake. My mouth fell open. He was using me as the excuse for Jake's behavior. Oh, the poor little guy, Mrs. Patterson said, and I could hear the sympathy in her voice. Sibling conflict can be so traumatic for younger children. We're handling it, my mother added quickly. Harper's been acting out since her father died. Rebellion, you know. We're considering counseling for her. When they emerged from the classroom, I was sitting in the hallway pretending to read a book. Mrs. Patterson gave me a look I'd never seen from her before, disappointment mixed with concern. Like I was the troublemaker causing problems for sweet little Jake. Jake walked past me without making eye contact, his Pokemon backpack dragging on the floor behind him. That night, I called my older cousin Emma. She was in college, mature, someone I thought might listen. Emma, I need to talk to someone about Jake. I think Marcus is. Oh God, Harper, not you too, she interrupted. Mom told me you've been stirring up drama at Sunday dinners. Look, I get it. New stepdad, weird adjustment period. But you can't keep doing this to your mom. She's happy for the first time since Uncle David died. Uncle David. My father. Reduced to a reason why mom deserved happiness, no matter the cost. But Emma, if you could just see. Harper, I love you, but you need to stop. You're going to destroy your mom's marriage over nothing. Marcus is a good guy. He coaches Little League, he goes to Jake's school plays, he fixed your car last month. Good stepfathers don't grow on trees. After she hung up, I sat in my car in the school parking lot and screamed until my throat was raw. They had all made up their minds. I was the troubled teenager with an overactive imagination. Marcus was the patient stepfather dealing with difficult kids. Mom was the grieving widow who deserved a second chance at love. And Jake? Jake was just collateral damage in the story they decided to tell themselves. But here's the thing about being called paranoid for months on end, eventually, you start to embrace it. You get careful. You get smart. You start thinking like someone who knows that no one will believe them without ironclad proof. So I began to plan. I started with the small things. A voice recording app on my phone, always ready. A tiny notebook where I documented every incident with timestamps. Photos of Jake's bruises when I could manage it, though he'd started changing clothes in the bathroom with the door locked. The first real evidence I captured was 3 weeks later. Jake had been limping slightly after school, favoring his left leg. When I asked him about it, he mumbled something about falling in gym class. But that night, I heard it again, the angry voice, the crying, the thumps. This time, I was ready. I pressed my phone against Jake's bedroom door and hit record. The audio was muffled but audible, Marcus's voice cutting through Jake's quiet sobs, telling him he was worthless, that he couldn't do anything right, that maybe he'd learn to be less clumsy if he had to stand in a corner until morning. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. Finally. Proof. The next morning, I played the recording for my mother while Marcus was at work. She listened for maybe 10 seconds before holding up her hand. Stop. Mom, you have to hear this. I said stop. Her voice was ice cold. Harper, this is enough. More than enough. I stared at her. You're not going to listen to the whole thing. I don't need to listen to some recording you probably faked to hear what I already know, that you've completely lost perspective. She stood up from the kitchen table, her coffee mug clutched in her hands like a weapon. Marcus told me you've been lurking outside Jake's room at night. That's not normal behavior, Harper. Lurking? I was checking on my brother because he was crying. Your brother has nightmares sometimes. That's normal for kids his age. What's not normal is a 17-year-old girl creeping around the house with recording equipment like some kind of spy. I felt the world tilt sideways. You think I made this up? You think I faked a recording? I think you become obsessed with proving something that doesn't exist, and you're scaring Jake in the process. She set her mug down hard enough that coffee sloshed over the rim. Marcus is worried about you. We both are. Marcus is worried about me. He thinks you might need professional help. More intensive than regular counseling. The words hung in the air like a threat. There are places that specialize in teenagers who've experienced trauma, who can't adjust. You're talking about sending me away. It wasn't a question. I'm talking about getting you the help you clearly need before you destroy this family completely. That afternoon, I showed the recording to my best friend Zoe. She listened to the whole thing, her face getting paler with each passing second. Holy shit, Harper. This is really bad. Finally, someone who. No, I mean this is bad for you. She looked at me with something close to fear. You recorded this without permission. In his bedroom. This could get you in serious legal trouble. My stomach dropped. What? My dad's a lawyer, remember? Recording someone in their private bedroom without consent. That's illegal in most states. And if you try to use this. She shook her head. Harper, they could press charges. Marcus could have you arrested. I snatched my phone back. So I'm supposed to just let him hurt Jake? I'm not saying that. I'm saying you need to be smarter about this. Go through proper channels. Call CPS, talk to a school counselor, something official. But I had tried the school counselor. Mrs. Rodriguez had listened politely, then called my mother for a family meeting, where Marcus explained how difficult the adjustment period had been, how I'd been struggling with my father's death, how they were considering family therapy to help me work through my behavioral issues. Mrs. Rodriguez had nodded sympathetically and suggested I join the grief support group. The grief support group. For grieving my living brother who was being hurt every night while I sat in a circle talking about feelings. That evening at dinner, Marcus was especially cheerful. Harper, your mom told me you've been having a hard time lately, he said, cutting his steak with deliberate precision. I want you to know, I'm not angry. I understand that change is difficult, especially for someone who's been through what you've been through. Jake was staring at his plate, pushing peas around with his fork. There was a small cut on his lower lip that hadn't been there that morning. I think what you need is some space to work through these feelings in a healthy environment, Marcus continued. I know someone who runs a great program for kids dealing with trauma and adjustment issues. Very peaceful place, lots of structure. Might be exactly what you need to get your head straight. My mother nodded along like this was a reasonable conversation and not a thinly veiled threat. What do you think, kiddo? Marcus asked Jake, ruffling his hair. Jake flinched so hard he knocked over his water glass. As I cleaned up the spilled water, I made a decision. If they wanted to play hardball, I'd learn their game. And I'd play it better. The threat of being sent away lit a fire under me that I didn't know existed. If Marcus thought he could intimidate me into silence, he'd severely underestimated how stubborn I could be when cornered. I started researching everything I could about documenting abuse legally. I spent hours in the library after school, reading about one-party consent laws, mandatory reporting requirements, and what constituted admissible evidence. I learned that in our state, I could legally record conversations I was part of, but not private conversations between other people. I learned about something called exigent circumstances that might protect someone trying to document ongoing abuse. Most importantly, I learned that I needed to be smarter about who I trusted. The first thing I did was test my family's loyalty. I told my Aunt Susan a deliberately false story about Marcus, that I'd seen him going through my underwear drawer. It was specific enough to be disturbing, but not something that would trigger an immediate CPS call. Within 2 days, Marcus cornered me in the kitchen. Your Aunt Susan called your mother with some very interesting accusations, he said quietly. Want to explain why you're telling family members that I'm some kind of pervert? My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. He stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of his cologne, the same stuff he wore to church every Sunday where everyone thought he was such a devoted family man. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Susan back and tell her you made a mistake. That you misunderstood what you saw. And then you're going to stop this little crusade of yours before it gets really ugly. Or what? His smile was cold enough to freeze blood. Or I'll be forced to take more drastic measures to protect this family from your increasingly unstable behavior. Your mother's already convinced you need professional help. Wouldn't take much to convince her you need it urgently. That night, I called Susan back and recanted my story, just like he demanded. But now I knew for certain that my family was feeding him information. Every concern I raised, every person I confided in, it was all getting back to him. He had turned my own support system into his early warning network. So I stopped confiding in family altogether. Instead, I started building my own network. I befriended Jake's teacher, Mrs. Chen, not by making accusations but by volunteering to help with classroom activities. I became the helpful older sister who showed up to school events, who asked thoughtful questions about Jake's progress, who seemed genuinely invested in his well-being. Mrs. Chen started to trust me. And trust meant she began sharing small concerns. Jake seems tired lately, she mentioned one afternoon as I helped her clean erasers. Has he been having trouble sleeping? Sometimes, I said carefully. Big changes at home, you know. New stepdad and all. She nodded sympathetically. It's an adjustment. Though I have noticed he's become quite anxious about making mistakes. Very hard on himself. I filed that information away. Every conversation with Mrs. Chen gave me insight into how Jake was handling things at school, away from Marcus's influence. She was documenting behavior changes without even realizing it. I also started volunteering at the community center where they had parenting classes and family support groups. Not to attend, but to help with administrative tasks. I learned the names of social workers, got familiar with their faces, understood their processes. Knowledge was armor, and I was suiting up for war. But Marcus was getting more aggressive. Jake's accidents were becoming more frequent, and more creative. A black eye from walking into a door. Finger-shaped bruises on his arm from where Marcus had grabbed him to keep him from falling down the stairs. The worst part. Jake was starting to defend Marcus. Harper's just jealous, Jake said quietly one evening when I tried to ask him about a new bruise on his shoulder. Marcus says she wishes mom never got remarried because then she'd be the only one taking care of me. The words hit like a physical blow. Marcus wasn't just hurting Jake, he was poisoning him against me. Turning my little brother into another weapon to use against the only person trying to help him. Jake, that's not true. I'm worried about you because I love you. If you loved me, you wouldn't try to make mom sad all the time, he said, parroting words that were clearly not his own. Marcus says families are supposed to stick together, not try to break each other apart. I watched my brother, my sweet, gentle little brother who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, look at me like I was the enemy. Marcus had been working on him, probably for months, crafting a narrative where I was the problem and he was Jake's protector. The manipulation was surgical in its precision. Things got worse after that. Marcus started involving Jake in what he called family discussions about my behavior. I'd come home to find them sitting together on the couch, Marcus's arm around Jake's shoulders in a gesture that looked protective but made my skin crawl. Jake and I were talking about how to help you, Marcus would say, his voice dripping with false concern. We're both worried about these stories you've been telling. Jake thinks maybe you need more friends your age. Jake would nod solemnly, playing his assigned role perfectly. The united front was devastating and brilliant. How could I argue that Marcus was hurting Jake when Jake himself was sitting there defending him? My mother ate it up. It's so sweet how protective Jake is of Marcus, she gushed to my grandmother during one of their phone calls. I think he sees him as the father figure he's been missing. I was losing Jake, and everyone could see it except me, according to them. I was the jealous older sister who couldn't handle sharing attention. I was the troubled teenager acting out because I couldn't accept my mother's happiness. The narrative was so clean, so believable, that I started doubting myself again. Then Marcus made his first real mistake. I came home from school early one day because of a fire drill that ended up being longer than expected. I heard voices from the kitchen, Marcus and Jake, and something about the tone made me freeze in the hallway instead of announcing my presence. You did good today, buddy, Marcus was saying. I know it's hard sometimes, pretending Harper's just being dramatic. But you understand why it's important, right? I guess, Jake's voice was small. But sometimes I think maybe. Maybe what? The warmth in Marcus's voice vanished instantly. Maybe you want to end up in foster care. Maybe you want strange people taking care of you instead of your mom and me. No, I just. Because that's what happens to little boys who tell lies about their families, Jake. They get taken away from everyone who loves them. Is that what you want? There was a long silence. Then Jake's voice, even smaller, no. Good. Because I'd hate for your mom to lose another child. Losing Harper to her mental problems is going to be hard enough on her. My blood turned to ice. He was already talking about me in past tense. Whatever timeline he had for getting rid of me, it was accelerating. I crept back to the front door and made a show of entering normally, calling out greetings. When I walked into the kitchen, Marcus was helping Jake with homework, the picture of a devoted stepfather. But now I knew the truth, Jake wasn't defending Marcus because he loved him. He was defending Marcus because he was terrified of what would happen if he didn't. That conversation changed everything. I finally understood that Jake wasn't lost to Marcus's manipulation, he was trapped by it. The realization gave me hope, but it also made me reckless. I started pushing harder, trying to create opportunities to talk to Jake alone. I'd suggest trips to the store, offer to help with homework, volunteer to walk him to school. But Marcus had thought of that too. Suddenly, Jake was never available for one-on-one time. There was always a conflicting plan, a schedule change, a reason why Marcus needed to come along or Jake needed to stay home. Harper's been very insistent about spending time with Jake, Marcus mentioned casually at dinner one night. It's sweet, but I worry she's becoming a little obsessive. Hovering isn't healthy for either of them. Mom nodded thoughtfully. I've noticed that too. Maybe we should encourage Jake to be more independent, not rely on his sister so much. Just like that, my attempts to connect with Jake were reframed as unhealthy attachment. Marcus was a master at this, taking normal sibling relationships and making them sound pathological. The isolation was suffocating, but it also clarified something important. I couldn't save Jake through conventional means. My family wouldn't listen. The authorities needed concrete evidence. And Marcus was too smart to leave obvious traces. So I started getting creative. I began documenting everything with military precision. Not just Jake's injuries, but the patterns. Marcus was always more aggressive on days when he'd had conflicts at work or when Mom was working late shifts. He was careful to never leave marks that would be visible in Jake's school photos or during swimming lessons. The abuse was strategic, calculated. I created a detailed calendar, noting Mom's work schedule, Jake's injuries, Marcus's mood changes, family events, anything that might establish patterns. I hid it in my laptop, password protected and buried in folders with innocent names. But Marcus was getting suspicious of my sudden compliance. I'd stopped making accusations, stopped trying to talk to family members about my concerns. To him, that probably looked more dangerous than my previous outbursts. "You've been very quiet lately," he said one afternoon when Jake was at a friend's house and Mom was at work. "Not like you." "I'm trying to be better," I said, not looking up from my homework. "Like you said, families should stick together." He sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "You know what I think? I think you're planning something. You've got that look in your eyes, like you're waiting for something." My heart rate spiked, but I kept my voice level. "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you do." He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "You think you're smarter than me, don't you? Think you can outmaneuver me somehow?" The mask was slipping. This wasn't the concerned stepfather voice he used around Mom, or the buddy-buddy tone he used with Jake. This was something colder, more predatory. "I just want our family to be happy," I said, echoing words I'd heard him use countless times. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Our family would be a lot happier without certain elements causing drama. Your mother's starting to see that too." The threat was crystal clear. I was running out of time. That night, I made a decision that would either save Jake or destroy what was left of my relationship with my family forever. I was going to get proof, whatever it took. And I was going to do it in a way that would make it impossible for anyone, Marcus, Mom, or the extended family who dismissed me for years, to deny what was happening. The war was about to begin, and this time, I wasn't fighting fair. I started with the smoke detector. It sounds ridiculous now, but I'd read online that you could hide recording devices inside everyday objects. The smoke detector in the hallway between Jake's room and the living room had been chirping intermittently, the kind of annoying sound that drives parents crazy but that they never quite get around to fixing. I told Mom I'd replace the battery as my contribution to being more helpful around the house. She was so pleased by my sudden initiative that she didn't question why I insisted on buying a specific brand of battery, or why I took so long installing it. What she didn't know was that I'd also installed a tiny digital recorder inside the detector housing. It was voice-activated and could record for up to 48 hours before needing to be retrieved and recharged. I bought it with money saved from my part-time job at the movie theater, telling the electronics store clerk it was for recording lectures. The first week yielded nothing useful, just normal household sounds, Mom's phone conversations, Jake watching cartoons. I started to wonder if Marcus had somehow sensed what I was doing. He'd always been unnaturally good at knowing when someone was watching. Then Mom announced she'd be working a double shift on Saturday, 16 hours at the hospital due to a colleague calling in sick. Jake had a sleepover planned at his friend Tommy's house, but Friday afternoon, Marcus casually mentioned that Tommy's family had to cancel due to a stomach bug going around. "Looks like it's just going to be us guys this weekend," Marcus told Jake with that jovial tone that made my skin crawl. "We can work on that birdhouse project." I volunteered to stay home too, but Marcus was ready for that. "Actually, Harper, didn't you mention wanting to visit your friend Sarah this weekend? I think some time with people your own age would be good for you. I can handle Jake just fine." Mom jumped on the idea immediately. "That's perfect. Sarah's mom called yesterday asking if you wanted to come to their lake house." I was going to bring it up. I was trapped. Refusing would look suspicious, especially since I'd been trying to appear more cooperative. But leaving Jake alone with Marcus for an entire weekend felt like abandoning him. "I don't know," I said weakly. "Maybe I should stay and help with." "Nonsense," Mom interrupted. "Marcus is perfectly capable of watching his stepson for one weekend. You need to start trusting us, Harper." That word, trust. It was always about my failure to trust, never about whether that trust was deserved. I spent Friday night at Sarah's lake house, but I couldn't enjoy any of it. While Sarah and her family grilled burgers and watched movies, I kept checking my phone obsessively, hoping for a text from Jake. Nothing came. Saturday crawled by in agony. Every hour felt like a year. Sarah's mom commented that I seemed distracted, asking if everything was okay at home. I plastered on a smile and made excuses about being tired from school. By Sunday morning, I was ready to fake food poisoning to get home early, but Sarah's mom was already packing up to leave. The drive back felt endless. When I finally walked through our front door, the house felt different. Too quiet. Jake was in his room, door closed, which was unusual for a Sunday afternoon. Mom was still at work. Marcus was in the living room watching football like nothing had happened. "How was your weekend?" he asked without looking away from the TV. "Fine, I managed." "Where's Jake?" "Taking a nap. We had a big day yesterday building that birdhouse. He's pretty tired." Something about the way he said it, the slight emphasis on tired, made my stomach clench. But Jake appeared a few minutes later, seeming normal enough. Maybe I really was being paranoid. It wasn't until Monday night that I was able to retrieve the recorder. What I heard on that device would haunt me for the rest of my life, but it would also be exactly what I needed to make sure Marcus never hurt anyone again. I waited until everyone was asleep before retrieving the recorder. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it twice while carefully extracting it from the smoke detector housing. Back in my room with headphones on, I started the playback from Saturday morning. The first few hours were mundane, Marcus making breakfast, the TV in the background, normal conversation. Then Mom's voice, saying goodbye before her double shift. The front door closing. A long stretch of cartoon sounds and Jake's occasional laughter. Around 2 p.m., everything changed. "Jake, come here. We need to talk about your sister." My blood went cold. Even through the recording, I could hear the shift in Marcus's tone, the jovial stepfather mask dropping away. What about Harper? She's been filling your head with lies about me, hasn't she? Trying to turn you against your family. I don't know what you mean. Jake's voice was small, confused. Don't lie to me, son. I know she's been asking you questions, trying to make you think I'm some kind of monster. That's not fair to you, is it? Having your sister scare you like that? There was a long pause. Then Jake, barely audible, Harper just worries about me. Does she? Or does she like the attention? Think about it, Jake. Every time she makes these accusations, who gets all the focus? Who gets to be the hero in her little story? I could hear Marcus moving around, his voice getting closer to Jake. Your mom and I have been talking. We're worried about Harper's behavior. The way she hovers over you, tries to control everything you do. That's not normal sibling love, buddy. That's something else. But she's always protected me. From what? Marcus's voice sharpened. From me. From your own mother. Jake, I need you to understand something very important. Harper is sick. She has problems in her head that make her see danger where there isn't any. And the more you encourage her by running to her every time you get a normal bump or bruise, the sicker she gets. My chest felt tight. He wasn't just isolating me from Jake, he was isolating Jake from me, making my little brother complicit in his own abuse by convincing him that protecting me meant staying silent. I don't want Harper to be sick, Jake whispered. Then you need to help her get better. And that means not telling her every little thing that happens when she's not around. Can you do that for me? For your sister's sake. I guess so. Good boy. Now, about that birdhouse, I noticed you weren't paying very good attention when I was showing you how to use the hammer properly. When someone's trying to teach you something important, you need to focus. Let's try again. What followed made me rip the headphones off. But I forced myself to put them back on, to listen to every horrible second. Jake's small cries of pain. Marcus's calm, instructional voice explaining how accidents happen when little boys don't pay attention. The sound of Jake trying not to sob. This stays between us, remember? Harper doesn't need to know about our project. She's got enough problems without worrying about normal father-son activities. The recording continued for hours. Marcus systematically breaking down Jake's trust in me while disguising abuse as lessons, accidents, necessary discipline. All delivered in that same reasonable, patient tone he used at family dinners. By the end, I was shaking with rage so pure it felt like poison in my veins. But I also felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years, vindication. Here was proof. Undeniable, recorded proof of exactly what I'd been trying to tell everyone. The question now was what to do with it, and whether I was ready for the nuclear explosion this evidence would create in my family. Because once I pulled this trigger, there would be no going back for any of us. I stared at the recorder in my hands, the weight of what I'd heard pressing down on my chest like concrete. I had the evidence. I had proof. But suddenly, having it felt more terrifying than not having it. Because now I had to decide who to trust with it. The obvious choice was calling Child Protective Services or the police directly. But 3 years of being dismissed had taught me that adults were remarkably good at explaining away inconvenient truths. What if they thought the recording was somehow fake? What if Marcus convinced them it was taken out of context? What if the audio quality wasn't clear enough? Worse, what if they confronted Marcus before they could guarantee Jake's safety? I spent Monday in a haze, watching Marcus at dinner, studying his face as he asked Jake about school. The same gentle smile. The same patient tone. If I hadn't heard that recording, I would never have detected the subtle malice underneath when he said, "You look tired, buddy. Maybe early bedtime tonight?" Jake just nodded, barely touching his food. When he caught me looking at him, he quickly looked away. Marcus's poisonous words were already working. Jake was pulling back from me, probably thinking he was helping me get better. Tuesday morning brought a new complication. As I was getting ready for school, Mom knocked on my door. "Harper. Can we talk?" She sat on my bed, looking unusually serious. "I got a call from the school counselor yesterday. She said you've seemed distracted lately, and your grades have dropped. She's concerned about stress at home." My heart hammered. Had I been that obvious? It's just senior year stuff. College applications in. Is this about Marcus? Mom's voice was gentler than I'd heard in months. "Honey, I know the adjustment has been hard. Blending families isn't easy. But if there's something specific bothering you, we should talk about it." For one wild moment, I almost told her everything. Almost pulled out my phone and played the recording right there. But then I remembered all the other times I tried to tell her, all the ways she dismissed and minimized my concerns. This felt like a trap, or worse, like Marcus had coached her to have this conversation. "Things are fine, Mom. I'm just tired." She studied my face. The counselor suggested family therapy. Just a few sessions to help us all communicate better. What do you think? Family therapy with Marcus. Where he'd have a trained professional to help him gaslight me more effectively. Sure, I said. That sounds good. After Mom left, I realized my hands were shaking. Time was running out. If they were talking to school counselors and suggesting therapy, it meant they were building a narrative about my mental state. Soon, it wouldn't matter what evidence I had, I'd be the unstable teenager with a history of paranoid accusations. I needed help, but from someone who couldn't dismiss me, someone with real authority. I started researching online, looking for victim advocacy groups, trying to figure out the best way to report abuse. Every article stressed the importance of involving law enforcement immediately when you had evidence. But first, I needed a backup plan. I made copies of the recording, one uploaded to a secure cloud account, one on a flash drive hidden in my room, one on my phone. Then I did something that felt both necessary and terrible. I wrote everything down. Every incident, every dismissal, every family member who had mocked me. Names, dates, exact quotes where I could remember them. If this exploded, I wanted everyone to know exactly who had chosen Marcus's comfort over Jake's safety. By Wednesday evening, I had made my decision. Thursday after school, I would go to the police station. But first, I needed to get Jake somewhere safe. Thursday morning, I woke up to screaming. Not Jake's screams, Mom's. I bolted out of bed and found her in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, mascara streaking down her cheeks. What do you mean he's not there, she was saying. I dropped him off myself yesterday morning. My stomach plummeted. What's wrong? Where's Jake? Mom held up a finger, still listening to whoever was on the phone. Yes, I'll hold. She turned to me, eyes wild. Jake never showed up to school yesterday. The automated system called, but I was in meetings all day and didn't check my messages until this morning. The room started spinning. Jake had been missing for over 24 hours, and none of us had noticed. Where's Marcus? He left early for that conference in Portland, remember? He won't be back until Sunday. Mom's voice cracked. Harper, where could Jake be? Did he say anything to you? I stared at her, a horrible realization creeping in. Marcus's sudden business trip. Jake's terrified face at dinner Tuesday night. The way he'd avoided looking at me all week. We need to call the police, I said. I already did. They're sending someone over. Mom sank into a chair. God, what kind of mother am I? How did I not know my own son was missing? The kind who doesn't notice when he's being abused either, I thought bitterly, but kept my mouth shut. Instead, I ran upstairs and grabbed my phone, checking the recording again to make sure I had the date right. Tuesday evening. Whatever Marcus had done to Jake after that conversation had been bad enough to make my brother run. When I came back downstairs, Mom was on the phone with Jake's school, then his friend's parents, then our neighbors. Each call ended the same way, no one had seen him. The police arrived an hour later. Officer Martinez was younger than I'd expected, with kind eyes that actually seemed to listen when Mom explained the situation. Her partner, Officer Chen, took notes while asking standard questions about Jake's habits, friends, favorite places. Has Jake ever run away before? Officer Martinez asked. Never, Mom said immediately. He's a good kid. Quiet, responsible. This isn't like him at all. Any recent changes at home? Stress at school? Problems with friends or family members? Mom started to shake her head, then stopped. Her eyes found mine across the room, and I saw the moment she remembered 3 years of my paranoid accusations. There have been some adjustment issues, she said carefully. My daughter has had concerns about my husband's relationship with Jake, but we've been working through that. Officer Martinez looked at me. What kind of concerns? This was it. The moment I'd been preparing for, except it was happening all wrong. Jake was missing, possibly hurt, and here I was about to destroy what was left of my family. But if there was any chance the recording could help find him. I think my stepfather has been hurting Jake, I said. The words came out steady, clear. I have proof. The silence in the room was deafening. Mom's face went completely white. What kind of proof? Officer Chen asked, pen poised. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. A recording. From Tuesday night. I think after I recorded this, Marcus did something to Jake that was bad enough to make him run away. Harper, Mom whispered, but I was already pressing play. As Marcus's voice filled our kitchen, speaking those horrible, calculated words, I watched my mother's world crumble in real time. And I realized that finding Jake was only the beginning. Now everyone would finally hear the truth. The recording played for maybe 2 minutes, but it felt like hours. Marcus's voice, so different from his usual gentle tone, filled the kitchen with its casual cruelty. When it ended, the silence was suffocating. Mom was staring at my phone like it was a venomous snake. That's not. She couldn't finish the sentence. Officer Martinez cleared her throat. When was this recorded? Tuesday night. Jake disappeared Wednesday morning. My voice sounded hollow. Marcus left for his Portland conference Wednesday afternoon. What conference? Mom's voice cracked. He said Thursday morning. He said, she grabbed her phone, scrolling frantically. I'm calling his hotel. Officer Chen was already radiating the dispatcher. We need to put out an alert for Marcus Webb. Possible child endangerment, missing minor involved. Mom's call went straight to voicemail. She tried the hotel. I'm sorry, I heard the desk clerk say, we don't have anyone by that name registered. The blood drained from Mom's face. There's no Marcus Webb at the Portland Marriott. They've never had a reservation under that name. What about his work? Officer Martinez asked. Can you contact his employer? He's between jobs right now. Consulting work, mostly. Mom's voice was getting smaller with each revelation. Oh God. Oh my God, what if he took Jake? What if they're both? Ma'am, we need you to stay calm, Officer Chen said, but I could see the urgency in his movements as he spoke into his radio again. We're going to issue an Amber Alert. I need recent photos of both Jake and Mr. Webb, vehicle information, everything you can give us. While Mom fumbled through her phone for pictures, my mind was racing. Marcus had planned this. The fake conference, the timing, he'd known I was getting suspicious. But why take Jake? Was this some twisted way to punish me for getting too close to the truth? Harper, Officer Martinez said quietly, drawing me aside. This recording, how long have you suspected abuse? 3 years, I whispered. Since Mom married him. But everyone said I was paranoid, attention-seeking. My whole family said I was trying to break up the marriage. Her expression darkened. And no adults ever investigated your concerns? They all thought I was crazy. The words tasted bitter. My aunts made jokes about it at family dinners. My uncle said I watched too many crime shows. Even Mom thought I needed therapy because I couldn't adjust to having a stepfather. Officer Martinez exchanged a look with her partner. We're going to need to speak with those family members. And we'll need any other evidence you might have, dates, incidents, anything. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, stop looking or you'll never see him again. My blood turned to ice. Officer Martinez, I said, holding up the phone. I think I just heard from Marcus. Both officers crowded around to read the message. Officer Chen was already calling for a tech unit to trace the number. This changes everything, Officer Martinez muttered. This isn't just child abuse anymore. We're looking at kidnapping, possibly worse. Mom had overheard. She was staring at us with growing horror. You think he actually took Jake? On purpose? Ma'am, we need to consider all possibilities, Officer Chen said diplomatically, but I could see the truth in his eyes. Marcus had planned this. And somehow, my recording had triggered it. The house suddenly felt like a crime scene. Officers were dusting for prints, going through Marcus's things, asking neighbors about what they'd seen. And somewhere out there, Jake was alone with the man who'd been systematically breaking him down for 3 years. My phone buzzed again. Another message, you should have minded your own business. I showed the second message to Officer Martinez, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone steady. She immediately called for backup and a detective while Officer Chen started coordinating with the FBI, apparently kidnapping across state lines made this federal. We need to keep him talking, Detective Rodriguez said when she arrived 20 minutes later. She was a small woman with steel in her eyes and a kind of calm authority that made you believe she'd seen everything. If he's reaching out, he wants something. We can use that. What could he possibly want? Mom asked. She'd been pacing the kitchen like a caged animal, calling Jake's name every few minutes as if he might answer from upstairs. Control, Detective Rodriguez said simply. He's lost his position in this household, his access to Jake, his cover. Now he's trying to regain leverage. My phone buzzed a third time, delete the recording and I'll bring him home. The detective read it over my shoulder. That's what he wants. He thinks without that recording, it's just your word against his. He can come back, play the concerned stepfather, say Jake was having problems and he took him somewhere to help. But I won't delete it, I said immediately. Of course not. But we're going to make him think you might. Detective Rodriguez turned to Mom. Mrs. Webb, I need you to understand something. Your daughter's recording might be the only thing keeping Jake alive right now. Marcus knows we have evidence. If he eliminates the witnesses. She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hit Mom like a physical blow. She sank into a chair, finally, looking at me with something other than annoyance or dismissal. I should have listened to you, she whispered. All those times you tried to tell me, and I wanted so badly for us to be a normal family again after your dad left. I thought you were jealous, or acting out, or... We can deal with that later, I cut her off. Right now we need to focus on finding Jake. Detective Rodriguez was already drafting a response text. We're going to tell him you need proof Jake is safe before you delete anything. Maybe we can get him to send a photo or video that'll give us location information. She handed me the phone to type, prove Jake is okay first. Then we can talk, The response came back in seconds, you're not in a position to make demands. Then another message, and this one made my blood freeze, check your email. I opened my email with trembling fingers. There was a video file from an anonymous account. Detective Rodriguez nodded for me to play it. Jake's face filled the screen, pale and tear-stained. He was sitting in what looked like a cheap motel room, Marcus's voice coming from behind the camera. Tell your sister you're fine, Jake. I'm okay, Harper. Jake's voice was barely a whisper. His left eye was swollen shut. Tell her what happens if she doesn't delete that recording. Jake's remaining good. I found the camera, and in it I saw 3 years of terror and pain that I'd been unable to prevent. He says if you don't delete it, he'll make sure no one ever finds me. Please, Harper. Please just do what he wants. The video ended. Mom was sobbing now, the sound harsh and broken in the silence of our kitchen. Detective Rodriguez was already on her radio, calling in the video to be analyzed for location clues. But all I could see was Jake's battered face, and all I could think was that this was my fault. My recording, my insistence on the truth, had pushed Marcus to this. My phone buzzed one more time, 1 hour to decide. Delete it or lose him forever, The next 45 minutes were a blur of controlled chaos. Detective Rodriguez had turned our kitchen into a makeshift command center, with officers analyzing the video frame by frame on their laptops while FBI agents traced the phone signals. Mom sat frozen at the table, staring at a photo of Jake from his last birthday party like she was trying to memorize his face. My phone had been quiet for 20 minutes when it suddenly rang. Not a text, an actual call from the same unknown number. Detective Rodriguez motioned for everyone to be silent and nodded for me to answer, holding up a recording device. Hello. My voice came out as barely a whisper. Harper. Marcus's voice was calm, almost conversational, like he was calling to ask what we needed from the grocery store. I hope you've been thinking clearly about our situation. I want to talk to Jake. Jake is sleeping right now. Poor kid's exhausted. All this stress, you understand. There was a sick satisfaction in his tone that made my skin crawl. He keeps asking why his big sister doesn't just delete one little recording to bring him home. Detective Rodriguez was frantically writing notes, showing me what to say, asked about the conference. Keep him talking, The Portland conference was fake, I said. You planned this whole thing. Marcus chuckled. You always were too smart for your own good. Yes, I've been preparing for various contingencies ever since you started getting persistent with your accusations. I knew eventually your paranoia might convince someone to take you seriously. It wasn't paranoia. It was the truth. The truth? His voice hardened. The truth is that I gave your broken little family stability. I provided for you, put food on the table, kept the lights on while your precious mother figured out how to be a single parent. And this is how you repay me. By trying to destroy everything I built. I could see Mom flinch at his words, but something had changed in her expression. The desperate hope that maybe this was all a misunderstanding was finally dying. You were hurting him, I said. I was disciplining him. There's a difference, though I don't expect a spoiled teenager to understand that. Jake needed structure, boundaries. Your mother was too soft, too guilty about the divorce to set proper limits. Detective Rodriguez held up a new note, asterisk location. Where are you, asterisk? Where are you taking him, Marcus? He doesn't deserve this. That depends entirely on your next decision. I found a nice place for us to start over, somewhere Jake can learn proper respect without interference. But I'd prefer to bring him home, Harper. I prefer for us all to go back to being a family. The word family coming from his mouth made me want to vomit. You have 15 minutes to delete that recording, he continued. Send me a video of you doing it, along with any copies you might have made. Then we can all pretend this unfortunate misunderstanding never happened. And if I don't? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. When he spoke again, his voice was ice cold. Jake is a very small boy, Harper. And this is a very big world. There are places where a child can disappear completely, people who don't ask questions about where unwanted kids come from. Is your pride really worth more than his life? The line went dead. Detective Rodriguez immediately started barking orders into her radio while Mom finally broke down completely, her sobs echoing through the kitchen. But I felt strangely calm, like I was watching everything happen from outside my own body. My phone buzzed with a text, 14 minutes left. Then another message came through, this one from Jake's own phone number. My heart stopped. Harper, help me please, he says we're going somewhere far away and I'm scared. Detective Rodriguez grabbed the phone, reading the message with growing urgency. He's getting desperate, she muttered. That's good and bad. Desperate people make mistakes, but they also make dangerous choices. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Marcus calling, it was Jake's number. Detective Rodriguez nodded grimly for me to answer. Jake. I could barely get his name out. Harper. Jake's voice was panicked, whispering frantically. He left his phone in the car and went into the gas station. I grabbed mine from his bag, but I don't know where we are, Anne. The line went dead. Detective Rodriguez was already shouting coordinates to someone on her radio. We got a ping. They're moving south on Highway 101, approximately 15 miles from the Oregon border. My phone immediately started ringing again, Marcus's number this time. When I answered, his voice was pure rage. That was very, very stupid. The sound of a car door slamming echoed in the background. Jake just lost phone privileges permanently. Marcus, please. You have 7 minutes to delete that recording, Harper. And after Jake's little stunt, the price just went up. I want you to post a public apology on all your social media. Tell everyone you made it all up, that you were lying about me, that you're sorry for trying to break up your mother's marriage. I looked at Detective Rodriguez, who was shaking her head violently while coordinating with what sounded like a highway patrol unit. I can't do that, I said. Then Jake pays the price for your selfishness. The call ended. Mom grabbed my arm. Harper, maybe you should just. No. The word came out harder than I intended. Mom, if I delete that recording and lie about what Marcus did, he wins. Even if they find Jake this time, Marcus will just disappear and come back later. That recording is the only thing protecting Jake long term. My phone buzzed with another text from Jake's number, but this one was clearly from Marcus, asterisk last chance. 5 minutes, asterisk. Detective Rodriguez's radio crackled, we've got eyes on the vehicle. White Honda Accord, license plate matching the Bolo. They're pulled over at a rest stop. My heart leaped, but Detective Rodriguez held up a warning hand. The car appears to be empty. Repeat, no occupants visible. What does that mean? Mom asked frantically. It means he switched vehicles, Rodriguez said grimly. Or. She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what she was thinking. Marcus was smart. He'd anticipated being tracked. My phone rang one more time. When I answered, Marcus's voice was eerily calm again. I assume your new friends have found my car by now. I told you I'd been planning for contingencies, Harper. Did you really think I'd make it that easy? Where is Jake? Safe, for now. But I'm running out of patience with your stubbornness. This could all be over if you just admit you were wrong about me. In the background of the call, I heard something that made my blood freeze, a train whistle, long and mournful. Detective Rodriguez caught it too, frantically gesturing to someone about train schedules and railway crossings. You have 1 minute to start recording that apology video, Marcus continued. Or Jake and I take a very long trip together, and trust me, where we're going, no one will ever think to look for him. Marcus, I'll delete the recording, I said desperately. Just bring Jake home. Please. Too late for that. I know you've made copies. I know the police have it now. The only way to fix this is for you to publicly destroy your credibility. Make everyone believe you're a liar who made it all up for attention. Just like your family always said you were. The train whistle sounded again, closer this time. 30 seconds, Harper. Start recording your apology, or Jake gets on that train with me. The train whistle was getting closer, and I could see Detective Rodriguez's team frantically tracking railway schedules on their computers. My finger hovered over the record button on my phone's camera, Marcus's ultimatum echoing in my head. Then I heard something that changed everything, Jake's voice in the background of Marcus's call, faint but unmistakable, the big water tower. Like the one from that movie. Detective Rodriguez's eyes went wide. She grabbed her radio, checked the old railway junction near Miller's Crossing. There's a defunct water tower there, it's on the Heritage train route. Clever boy, Marcus's voice came through the phone, but now there was an edge of panic. Looks like we need to speed up our timeline. I'm recording the apology, I said quickly, buying time while Detective Rodriguez coordinated the response. Just, give me a second to figure out what to say. You have exactly what I told you to say. That you made it all up. But as I held the phone, something shifted inside me. For 3 years, my family had demanded I apologize for seeing the truth. They'd wanted me to admit I was paranoid, attention-seeking, a liar. And now Marcus, the man who'd been terrorizing my little brother, was demanding the same thing. You know what, Marcus? I said, and my voice was steadier than it had ever been. I'm done apologizing for protecting my brother. Harper. I was never paranoid. I was never attention-seeking. I was a kid who saw her little brother being hurt and refused to stay silent, even when everyone told me I was crazy. And now the whole world knows I was right. Through the phone, I could hear vehicles approaching, sirens in the distance. You think you've won something? Marcus snarled. You think catching me makes you some kind of hero? You destroyed this family. Your mother will never forgive you for this. I looked at Mom, who was listening to every word. Her face was streaked with tears, but when our eyes met, she mouthed, I'm sorry. The family was already destroyed, I told Marcus. You destroyed it the first time you laid a hand on Jake. I'm just the one who finally stopped pretending everything was fine. The sirens were getting louder now, and I could hear Marcus cursing, telling Jake to stay close to him. This is the police. A voice boomed through a megaphone, audible even through the phone. Release the child and step away from the railway. You did this. Marcus screamed at me. You ruined everything. No, I said firmly. You did this the moment you chose to hurt a little boy instead of protecting him. The phone went quiet except for the sound of shouting and footsteps. Then Jake's voice, crying but alive, Harper. Harper, they found me. 20 minutes later, Detective Rodriguez walked through our front door with Jake in her arms. He launched himself at me, and I held him tighter than I'd ever held anything in my life. He kept saying his sister would save him, Rodriguez told us quietly. Even when he was scared, he never stopped believing you'd find him. As the news broke, my phone started buzzing with messages from relatives who'd spent years mocking my paranoia. Aunt Linda, Uncle Pete, the cousins who'd laughed at family dinners, they all wanted to apologize now, to explain that they never really knew. But I was done caring about their apologies. I had Jake back. I had the truth. And I had the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes, the paranoid kid is just the only one paying attention. Marcus was arrested at the railway crossing. He never got his apology video. He never deserved one.